Gather round East Lansing. It is Thursday night in East Lansing this week, doing the Spartan Mag live a little later in the week than usual because of the huge basketball game that took place at the Breslin Center on Tuesday night. Michigan State losing to Duke by 12 points, whatever that was. 87-75. Forgot about that one already. I know that you have not. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. That is the Michigan State Rivals.com website. A lot of Michigan State subscribers, Spartan Maggers from all over the country, chime in there at the Underground Bunker message board, and they post questions. We field some of those questions about basketball and Michigan State Spartan football, and we will take some questions here on the YouTube, the chat area, and I think we may have already gotten an okay about the audio. I always look to see how we're doing on that. Thanks to the people chiming in already. Go ahead and post your questions. We will get to them. We'll have a lot of time, some time to discuss Michigan State football, finishing the regular season 6-6, looking ahead to the postseason. A lot of people ask me, what bowl game do I think they're going to? You know, you've been hearing a lot of things about the Pinstripe Bowl lately. It's either the Pinstripe Bowl or the Quick Lane Bowl. No scoop there. Small chance that it could have been something else. But a lot of us thought it was a slam dunk for the Quick Lane Bowl, but Pinstripe Bowl probably will end up choosing between Michigan State and Illinois. And right now, Michigan State, from a brand standpoint, is a more popular choice for that bowl game, if that's what ends up being the choices for the Pinstripe Bowl. That depends on what happens on Selection Sunday, how many Big Ten teams get selected in the top half going to the bigger bowls, and how it trickles down. You guys know that. It's not like the old days when you hear about backroom deals and talks and things, and there's really not many scoops until all that stuff gets straightened out. As far as basketball goes, we will be talking about what went wrong against Duke, and we will be talking about player development in that regard as we move along. So anyway, hey, come on in, get a beverage. I know some of you are returning maggers here at Spartan Mag Live. Some of you, it might be your first time. Get a beverage. We will talk, and it'll be a lot of fun. Let's go to the mailbag. These are questions that were posted at the Underground Bunker message board. My desk is a little too far away here, and I'll get to some of them right now. We'll go straight to a hard-hitting question from MSU 66. He's from Lansing, Michigan. He said, did anyone ever find out what substance Joe Bocci was supposed to have taken, and did he know it was banned when he took it? Also, does all of this impact his marketability with the pros? As far as Joe Bocci goes, I mean, Michigan State, we're not going to know specifically what it was, but to me, the fact that Joe Bocci and Michigan State, I think in conjunction, appealed those findings leads me to believe that they thought they had a case. Maybe they thought that it wasn't a banned substance. Maybe they thought that there were mitigating circumstances. I don't know, but we talked about it a little bit last week. I'm not sure what it is, but a lot of indications that it was something over the counter. Now, there are things over the counter at places like GNC that are not allowed. There are some that are allowed, but if you stack them, like if you take more than one, sometimes it can give a reading that is not allowed. I don't know if that's the case, but sometimes those are the things that they look out for. That's what some of the players look out for, from what I hear. No players currently have told me that. That's just some of the word on the street. Anyway, did he know it was banned? I'm sure whatever he was taking as a supplement, he thought he could get by legally. I have to believe that. I don't think they're trying to get away with anything. I doubt they would risk that. As far as the players, D'Antonio was asked if the coaches often warn the players about what's legal and what's not, and he says constantly. So they are aware of them. Anyway, whatever the reading was, they thought they had a chance to appeal it. Didn't happen, you know that. But in terms of finding out what it was, I don't think we ever will. In the old days of the injectable steroids, it's my understanding that those are not really done anymore, because some of the over-the-counter things can do a lot of the same things, not up to the same extent, but it's my understanding there's not a lot of that goes on legally or illegally. Of course, it couldn't be legally, but I'm not sure the injectables are the thing anymore. There's a lot of the things over the counter. But obviously, you have to be careful with those. All right, another question here from Hayden V out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. How much attrition do you expect, if any, before or after the bowl game? How much attrition to the Michigan State roster? I'm going to say not much before the bowl game. If there had been any attrition, it would have already happened. After the bowl game, over the years, I can't think of too many people that have left the program in January or February. Usually they stick it out, finish a semester, take a shot at through winter conditioning, take a shot at spring practice, and see where they stand in the pecking order on the depth chart. At that point in time, then you might see some attrition then. The new portal has changed the calendar a little bit, so maybe it'll change this year. I'm not sure, but I'm not anticipating any. If I didn't say, I'll say already, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. That's the Rivals.com site covering Michigan State sports. Been covering Michigan State sports. I have, in some capacity, since 1987, going way back to the State News back in those old days, and on through Spartan Magazine, the print publication, and into the internet era. SpartanMag.com has been around since, 1997 or so. And we appreciate the subscribers that join us there at SpartanMag.com. And some of you that are watching right now have been with us since 1997, and we certainly appreciate you. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe here to our YouTube site. And if you're interested in SpartanMag.com, go on over there and check out the subscription opportunities. We will also post them beneath here, some links in terms of things you can do right now to subscribe. If you subscribe now, you can get a $75 Adidas e-card. So you subscribe, we give you $75 in Adidas gear. Pretty good deal. If you don't like that one, you can subscribe for a whole year for only $49. That's roughly half off for the year, and you will get a $49 credit to the Michigan State Fanatics site. That's the Rivals shop, Rivals.com shop, which is backed up by Fanatics. Subscribe, you get a $49 gift card to go there. So check those out. If you are Spartan Mag curious, go check it out. You'll have a lot of fun with that. Go ahead and post questions here. I said last week that we weren't going to go more than an hour or an hour 20. Ended up going an hour 40. It happened again. This light and our camera situation might not be charged long enough to go longer today, so it might be shorter. So go ahead and get those questions posted. Let's go to a basketball question right now. Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina says, "Hey Jim, lots of comments on Bo Borowski." Bo Borowski was one of the officials during the Michigan State Duke game the other night. And Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina says, "Seriously, what has he got against Tom Izzo? Not blaming the refs for the loss, but seriously, that crew of officials is terrible." That's what this guy says. "Does anyone keep track of records based on officials doing the game? I have to believe we are 500 at best with the Bo crew. Lastly, are you surprised they didn't give Marble a shot at guarding Vernon Carey?" I'll take the last question first. Marble, yes, I was surprised, especially when I went back and watched it again. The trouble that Kithier was having. Michigan State went with Malik Hall guarding Vernon Carey, and Malik Hall battled, competed, did his best, did a pretty good job in a lot of ways as a player, offensively and defensively. Had a real nice steal at one point, top side fronting, and then they tried to go over the top, and he was able to react and get a steal in the post. Malik Hall doing some good things every week, new things, still has things to learn. For example, there was one time when he drove, got fouled, no call. This is like 10 minutes into the game. Went up, shot blocked, other way, dunk. Good aggressive take. In the future, he can drive, kick that out. I can't remember who he had over in the right wing, but he had an open shooter over there. That's one of many things that Izzo's talking about when he says the players need to practice more and get the chance to learn one another more. There were a lot of times in that game when Michigan State had a chance to make an extra pass, whether it be a dump down under the rim or a kick out for three, that they didn't take advantage of it. If you have the stomach to go back and watch that game again, that's what I saw. Izzo will be speaking on Friday, probably after practice. I think Paul Konerdyk's going to be there. I'm usually there for practice. Can't do it this week. Got some family stuff to do this weekend. But I think Konendijk will be there to cover that practice, see what Izzo has to say after practice on Friday. I'd love to be there to ask him some of those questions, but I can't do it this week. I went over that tape not once, but twice. One time looked through it, took some notes, and then went back and only watched Aaron Henry. We'll get to that in a second. So getting back to Bo Borowski, I don't know if people keep records on those things at the basketball office. Maybe they do. In the old days, Izzo used to like to find out as soon as he could, who the officials are, and they might. I don't know if they would taper some play calls at the beginning or what changes they might do. I think Heathcote used to do some of that. Izzo used to, but he says he doesn't do it anymore. He says it's not worth the time. He just shows up, and whoever the refs are, that's who the refs are. As for Borowski, you're right. The officials would not have helped because Duke was great that night. And I'll talk more about that in a second. And Michigan State was not great. But the officiating, I think it had like a 5 to 8 point impact on the first half. Of course, Michigan State missed 5 or 6 free throws. That had an impact also. I think the score was 29-18 with 5 minutes to go in the first half. And at that point, Michigan State was 3 out of 9 from the free throw line. Actually, 3 out of 8, but one was a missed 1-and-1, front end of a 1-and-1. If you make all those free throws, which is a lot to ask, but sometimes they've done that. If you make all those free throws, instead of down 11 with 5 minutes to go in the half, it's 29-24. 2 or 3 different calls go the other way, and Michigan State could be leading that game. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Duke was the better team. They were going to win that game. Michigan State, 14 turnovers. Not a terrible number of turnovers. Problem is 5 or 6 came early in the game and set the tone for that game. And then the foul situation. Xavier Tillman, his second foul, was maybe a little bit past vertical on Carey. Maybe Carey was leaning into him. That's what Izzo was saying. I think Jay Billis said that too. Definitely, Carey was leaning in once to Marcus Bingham for one of his fouls, I think, in the second half. Carey, very aggressive, very good in the low block, no question about that. But Tillman's second foul, maybe a good call because he was past vertical. Debatable, was he leaning into him? Here's the deal. If you're going to call that, then why don't you call some of the others at the other end? That's what Izzo was getting pretty upset about. Didn't feel like it was even. They needed even officiating. Izzo, you saw it, incensed. The goaltending that didn't go Michigan State's way at the end of the first half. And you saw briefly on the telecast that Izzo and Krzyzewski and one of the officials were meeting there near the scorer's table at the beginning of halftime. I watched Izzo. This didn't show up on television. But the minute that the buzzer sounded at the end of the half, Izzo gets that official, not Borowski, one of the other ones, because I don't think Izzo wants to. I think he'd rather talk to one of these other guys. You can tell who he has the better relationship with. He gets that official and starts going Earl Weaver on him, if you remember Earl Weaver, pleading his case loudly about whatever he thought was going on. And you can imagine, as they're walking along the sideline toward the tunnel, they're walking, and Izzo's yelling. And I can see from where I am that Krzyzewski is standing right there by the Duke bench. And he's standing. And he's like standing right in the way of Izzo's path of walking. And those two are good friends. They get along well. But they're getting gamesmanship a little bit. You know this. Izzo is lobbying for the next calls. Krzyzewski sees this. Krzyzewski stays right there. And Izzo walks. And he doesn't bump into Krzyzewski. But it's like Krzyzewski stood right there and set a pick on Izzo. All gamesmanship or working the officials. But Krzyzewski was not going to let Izzo monopolize that point of the game at halftime to be the only one to work the officials. So Krzyzewski stayed right there. Izzo bumps into him. Izzo pauses and looks at him, and that's when Krzyzewski starts yelling at the official about something. And the telecast caught that part right there when Krzyzewski was talking, and Izzo pauses for a second. And I know what Izzo was thinking. If you know Izzo real well enough, he respects the heck out of Krzyzewski, and a younger Krzyzewski would have acquiesced and just kind of maybe just been done with it, but he wasn't going to, and he interrupted, and he went back to finish his thoughts and kept going on and on and on and on. And Krzyzewski walked away, and Izzo kept giving it to him, and that's how the half ended. There was a time about 6 minutes into that game when Duke got a couple calls and Michigan State didn't, and that's been the case in the NCAA tournament a few times. That's definitely been the case when they've played down in Durham a few times. This time with Big Ten officials, there was a time when Izzo didn't get a call, and then Duke did, and Izzo just kind of looked at the ground. as he walked up the court. It's like 7 minutes into the game. And again, I know Izzo well enough. A lot of you do too. And I know what he's thinking. He's thinking, excuse my language, I'm not going to swear here, but I'm going to almost swear. He's thinking to himself, geez, I'm getting mother effed again. This time by Big Ten officials. And you know what else he's also thinking? This is what I said. And hey, again, Duke was going to win that game regardless, but it wouldn't have been the immediate gap. Maybe the gap would have came later in the game. But Izzo going after the officials at halftime, feeling compelled to do so. I'm thinking to myself, what are the chances Krzyzewski would ever feel compelled to go after the officials if it were down in Durham with ACC officials? Zero chance of that, because it wouldn't work out that way. Borowski and those guys, do they officiate Krzyzewski games very often? Maybe they don't. Do they get caught up in it? Maybe so. I'm not sure. But anyway, Duke was tougher, and it's good that Michigan State got on the court against a team that was tougher than they are so that their younger players and some of their sophomores can see that's the way you have to play. Last year, Duke had all kinds of horsepower, all kinds of talent, and rode that talent without a lot of X's and O's, just rode talent. It got them to the Elite Eight and got them beaten by Michigan State. When Krzyzewski was getting Duke, the program, when he was building it back in the old days, way back with Allery and even Ferry and Billis and those guys, Danny Mahar, and King and some of those guys, into, Abdel Nabi and some of those guys, and later Wojo, their thing was toughness. Duke was tough back then. Slapping the court. They're the ones that invented that. Taking charges. Some people think that's kind of a cop-out way to play. They'll take it, give up their body. I give them credit for sacrificing their body. You saw some hard fouls from Duke in this game, playing tough. They've got plenty of talent. They've got McDonald's All-Americans. But Duke is going for more of a toughness type of motif this year, and you can see it. They didn't have it last week when they lost to Stephen F. Austin, but they felt they needed to match Michigan State's toughness. They didn't just match what they thought would be Michigan State's level of toughness. They matched it and exceeded it. The good thing for Michigan State is they saw a team come in and out-tough them. That'll help Izzo build toward that in the future. I've got some more thoughts about the game. We'll get back to that in a second. As far as Marble, watching it again, when they went to Hall and the problems that Kithier was having, I am surprised that Marble didn't get a shot. I don't criticize it because the players know their personnel better than I do. They see what happens in practice more than I do. I go to practice once a week. And Marble is coming along, and he's more physically equipped to battle someone like Carey. And if they meet again in March, could look a lot different in terms of Marble getting on the court and getting that type of role. But looking back at it, physically, I thought Marble could have matched up physically in some ways. Maybe they didn't think he was ready in terms of what they wanted to run offensively or whatever. I'm sure they had a good reason, but looking back at it and the way Carey just was destroying everybody, might as well give Marble a shot to get destroyed too, right? So I was surprised about that. I'm going to stick with this Duke thing for a little bit longer. Question number 2. Spefton from East Lansing says, it seems every time we play Duke, someone put lead in our Nikes. The 2 exceptions are the NCAA tournaments, he says, including last year and 2005. He says, are our players succumbing to the Duke mystique? Are they being overcoached? Is it the talent differential showing? Also, what do you think happened to Aaron Henry? Okay. All right. So the Duke game in general. All right. Let's get to it. If I had more time, I kind of ran out of time here. I could have given some more specifics, but I'll stick with generalities. Duke was great that night. You know who else was great? Mike Krzyzewski was great that night. He's won 1,000 games. Sometimes when they play Michigan State, he's just kind of good. Sometimes Izzo outcoaches them, even if they lose. But Krzyzewski, with that loss to Stephen F. Austin, coming in, the Big Ten ACC Challenge is a big deal to these guys on both sides of the ledger, Izzo and Krzyzewski. Krzyzewski takes the ACC Challenge very, very seriously. He rarely coaches on another team's campus site, rarely in the non-conference. Big game for Krzyzewski. And he came with a big game plan, and their players responded with big game adaptation to that plan. They were excellent. Last year when they played with all that talent, and I mentioned this before the game and after the game when Michigan State won, when they were trying to go to Zion Williamson in the post, they didn't even have simple cross screens to get him open. Remember all those times Duke tried to send the ball into the post to Zion Williamson, and they threw it away. Tillman was topside fronting and steals, and they were just like telegraphing, like just middle school, like trying to throw it in. And I'd watched a lot of Duke prior to that, and I would never see anyone set a screen to get him open. Just simple X's and O's stuff. And Krzyzewski said the day before the game, after they beat Virginia Tech in the Sweet 16, he was kind of proud of the fact that they've got all this talent and they are kind of playing less of an X's and O's type of basketball. Those were not his exact words, but that's what he meant. I think he thinks that they were like trying to get to that positionless Olympic style of basketball where they just kind of read off each other and flow and go, which a lot of people think is the best form of basketball if you can get to that level. Well, Michigan State had some defensive guys that could play matched up pretty well with some of those guys. And there were times in that game where I'm sure they wish they had more X's and O's installed. I'm guessing. Come back this year, they lose Reddish to the pros and Barrett and Williamson. A new crop of good young talent. Not that type of physical talent, but some good shooters. And this year, man, the X's and O's, some of it's simple, but the screen roll they had down to Vernon Carey. They were operating that screen roll from the side ball screen and roll, top of the key, high ball screen and roll, or horns, which I talked about in the pre-tip read, screen with the roll replace. So screen back to the 4, and the 4 dumps it in on a high-low. All kinds of variations to do that over and over. And then they'd come out of a timeout one time and ran a flex cut to Jack White for a layup. I hadn't seen him run a flex cut with a screen all year. They did it again a couple minutes later, and Kyle Arns covered it. Didn't do it again. Just did it for one basket. That's enough. There were 3 or 4 different things that they did that were like simple but really well executed X's and O's. Krzyzewski didn't do that last year. This year for this game, X's and O's, he had a bag ready to go. And then they didn't need a lot of it because they were getting so many blocked shots and steals and runouts for dunks, which jacked up their field goal percentage to 58% for the game. Then you get Hurt making 3-pointers as a stretch 4. He was outstanding. Baker making some from the outside. He was excellent. He didn't miss any of his shots. Didn't seem like. So they were great. All right. So Michigan State, they had a bag of tricks too, right? They had some X's and O's. Well, this is the other thing Duke did real well. That pressure defense, that's what they were known for in the old days. Pretty good. Last year they would get a lot of steals. Last year they did a good job on the boards. This year, different players, but really adhering to that pressure defense, denying the passing lanes. Michigan State, a lot of their offense is dribble handoffs. Not a lot of it, but the dribble handoffs come into play. DHOs come into play a lot. When there was a DHO, they were getting up into it, getting into that handoff area, stole a couple of them, denying passing lane, deny. And the one time Tillman is just trying to pass it to ball reverse it, deny, not open, deny, not open, and he gets stripped, steal, dunk. Just because Duke did a great job defensively. Krzyzewski, great job. And Michigan State, especially early in the season, that pressure defense bothers Michigan State as an offense. Later in the year, if Winston gets more of a feel he has a great feel for Tillman with ball screens, develops more of a feel with Kithier, Hall, Bingham about screen and rescreen for more room. They started doing that more in the second half with Tillman when he came back in with 2 fouls. Came back in actually with 5 minutes to go in the half with 2 fouls, which shows some new thinking on Izzo's behalf. But setting up those ball screens against pressure defense is something that will improve as Winston gets more acclimated to his new ball screeners. He had a great feel for Ward and Kenny Goings last year. So that needs development, and that was one game in which some more ball screen feel would have helped. But Duke with the pressure defense, the DHOs. Here's the other thing. Winston was talking about that everywhere he went, he felt that he was going against 2 people. And you watch it, he would drive, and maybe I'll get a chance to do some video on this. I don't know if I'll have time or not, though. He would drive, and a help defender would leave Kithier and come and get Winston, or would leave Malik Hall and come and double team Winston. So when they see it on film, it's somewhat simple. Stop, ball fake, step through, and someone flash, and then extra pass under the rim. Sounds easy right here, but Duke surprised them with some of that stuff. And in the second half, Michigan State did more of the extra interior pass. Sometimes you saw that. Extra pass to like Hall down, and Hall to Tillman underneath, layup. Pressure release pass, extra pass, layup. It was there. Duke gambled, 2 defenders on Winston, and knowing the people around you. It's not at the level it needs to be. Izzo talked about that after the game. They haven't been able to practice like they would like to. A lot of eggshells, a lot of tenderness for a lot of ways, a lot of reasons because of the tragedy that happened 3 or 4 weeks ago. Understandably. Izzo said last week that when they rewind things to get on players, that he says, we're not getting on some players right now. He means Cassius Winston. They're giving him some space. Winston wants to be pressured. Winston's dad says, hey, get on him. Keep things normal. Izzo's trying to, but Izzo's got a lot of heart. And it's hard for Izzo to do it. He'll get there. And they'll get on him, and I'm not sure how that's all going to pan out, and how Cassius is going to do with it. You've been watching sports for a long time. I've been watching sports for a long time. I can't think in my frame of reference of a high-level athlete that has had to go through something like this and how they respond within that season. I don't know how that's going to go. So everybody's rooting for him. All you guys have done a great job supporting him, and he appreciates that. He's told us that. I don't know. But anyway, Winston said there was 2 people coming at him all the time. And I said, well, that happened sometimes last year. He said, yeah, it did, but he knew where Kenny Goins was going to be. Knew right where he's going to be. And Kenny would get it and had total green light, no conscience, going up. Shot. There were a couple times he got it back to Malik Hall, and Malik Hall passed up the shot, sent it over to Arns for 3, and didn't get the shot off, or sent it over to Rocket Watts, and they closed out. It's easier for a defense to close out on that second pass in that situation than the initial pressure release. They'll look at that film. They'll show Malik Hall. They're going to say, in this situation, we need you to be the Malik Hall of the Seton Hall game, when he carried them and basically won the Seton Hall game for Michigan State. I'm not saying he's going to be able to hit those shots like he did at Seton Hall every single time, but Cassius Winston needs a stretch 4 that when he drives and draws the extra defender, that he knows where he's going to be before he even looks over there, like he knew where Kenny Goins was going to be. Familiarity, practice. Does not have that with Malik Hall yet. And there was one time when he drove, and Aaron Henry, who got off to a pretty decent start, but right when he started to coast, that gets back to your question here about Aaron Henry. There was one play, I don't know, maybe 11 minutes into the game, maybe 12 minutes into the game, when it was starting to go to a 7-point lead, 9-point lead. Winston drives off the high screen. Someone, leaves Hall or leaves Kithier, and Henry's man sags down for some of that area. And Henry is way over on the left wing when he should have been filling over at the top of the key. And he's just floating. When they talk about not being energetic and playing hard enough, he's not always guilty of that, but this was Exhibit A. Aaron Henry needs to be Robin to Cassius Winston's Batman, if not another Batman. That was the plan this year. This team cannot be a top 10 team unless all 3 of those guys are really doing their thing. Point guard, wing, big man. Big man has come back really well, Tillman, since Maui. This time, for all the harassment that Winston was getting, for him to pick up that second defender coming at him, and for Aaron Henry to buy a ticket, bought a ticket. He was a spectator. Instead of filling back to where he needed to be. So Winston got in trouble and ended up trying to throw like a hammer pass over to Arns, I think. And Arns, he was open too, but it was way over here. And it was because it was so contested and such a difficult pass, the pass didn't end up in the pocket. The pass ended up way over here. So, you catch a pass here, you're not going to be able to shoot well. Izzo, Heathcote, they all say that. If you catch a pass up here, that turns a 39% three-point shooter into a 29% shooter at best. Henry should have been over there. Next time out, Izzo got into Henry about that and a couple other things. He's got a good heart and he's got a good mind, but he just fogs out. In Maui, there were 2 or 3 times when he was floating back on offense. I don't want to say cherry picking, but Michigan State wants to run out. But you got to get the rebound first. Izzo says find. He says, hit, find, fetch, hit, find, fetch. For rebounding, hit. Find your man, box out, hit him, find the ball, fetch, or go, whatever. Too many times, a couple of times, Henry didn't hit. Instead of hitting, he's kind of floated back here. And some guys will do that, and you wonder if they're selfish players and uncoachable. That's not the case with him. I think it's just a mental block. He just fogs out. That's got to get fixed. It will get fixed. But those times when he didn't arrive to help Winston, I mean, for this team to be good, Winston needs those pressure relief guys at the 2, at the 3, at the 4 to hit and make teams pay if they put too much pressure on Winston. Duke rolled the dice, came after it in pressure, and Michigan State never got to a point where they consistently made Duke pay. What was Michigan State that night? 4 out of 18 from 3? I mean, for Michigan State to be good this year, you got to have those guys hitting. Now, with Rocket Watts, 1 out of 7, actually 1 out of 6, because one of his missed shots was the half-court shot at the end of the first half. Doesn't really count. But he's moving well on defense, and he's running the court well. He's missing shots, had the charge, had a teardrop air ball, and then missed that one coming down the lane. Good block shot by Trey Jones, and Hurt was going up too. There are people on our message board saying that Rocket Watts does a poor job of finishing at the rim. He's not the greatest vertical athlete, but on that particular play, it was really good defense. I could go on and on about that stuff. Let's go to some of these questions here in the YouTube questions. I was probably going on long enough about that. I apologize. I could go on and on about some of the things that Michigan State didn't do well that day that in basketball that they can do better. One more thing about Aaron Henry. So Michigan State posted up Aaron Henry twice in the early going, and Duke did a real good job collapsing on him. Henry, they denied the passing lane with him, and he does not move well without the ball right now. He needs to, like you watch Winston, he'll V-cut this way, take a guy in, and set up the screen to get himself open for the ball. Henry not moving well without the ball. And a couple times Henry did drive, and they were also doing the same thing to him that they did to Winston. They would double team him. They would leave somebody alone in order to double team to stop Henry. Obviously, Winston and Henry were the high guys on the scouting report for Duke to stop those guys. That's the way it's going to be all year. Henry's never had that before. This is the first time in college that he has been the man, one of the men that they are out to stop. They denied him from getting the ball, and when he got it and drove anywhere, he all of a sudden saw 2 defenders. So he has to adapt to that and needs to get acclimated to teammates helping him out as well. But firstly, he needs to do a better job setting up his screens to receive the ball. Now, all right, let's go to some of these questions here in the YouTube area. We'll get back to some football thoughts. We'll maybe talk about some positives for basketball, but let's go to football here real quick. Question here on football. Sherlock from Sterling Heights says, what are the odds that one of the freshman offensive linemen, Duplain, Samac, and Dobbs, what are the odds that one of them will be starting next year as a regular or by the end of next year? The odds that one of them, I'd say better than 50%. When I look at next year on the offensive line, I think A.J.R. Curry's a left tackle. I think he can be a good one if he gets healthy and gets more and more experience. At center, is it Matt Allen or Nick Samac? Good question. Samac has done some good things, but Allen more experienced. If Allen becomes the center, does Samac become the guard? Does Samac compete with Duplain for a starting job at guard? Does Luke Campbell come back and play well? He came back this year and did some good things in September, has been banged up again, so I'm not sure where Luke Campbell stands. So Samac or Duplain, I think at left guard or Campbell. At right guard, it's going to be Jarvis, and he's got to stay healthy. And Jordan Reed, I think, has done pretty well at right tackle. Dobbs, I think he becomes most likely a second stringer. He's played a lot the last 2 weeks. He's not quite ready. Actually, he didn't play this week because he was hurt against Maryland. But maybe he will improve a lot during the spring. I'm not sure. I'm guessing one of the current freshmen that are getting a lot of time right now, I'm guessing one becomes a regular starter next year. Let's look at a few questions here in the YouTube area. Rob South, what's up from Clinton Township, Michigan? Rob, good to see you again. Sorry I went so long in that basketball stuff. That might have bored some of you people, but I went through it last night late. It's on my mind, and there's a lot of things. I wish I could just show you the video. Maybe we'll do that if I have some time at SpartanMag.com to show you what I'm talking about. Players leaving to double team Winston and the help that he needs, and the way that Henry fogged out there a couple times. It's all correctable. A lot of that stuff's correctable. John G. Hey, Jim here from downtown Mason, Michigan. Bradley Cruz checking in. Spartans Forever from Rochester, Michigan says off topic. Jim, did you see The Irishman? And if so, any thoughts? Talking about the movie on Netflix? No, I did not. I don't have any thoughts on that. Ed Francis checking in. Matthew Wolf checking in from Tampa, Florida. Voice crack. Any idea if Justin Rogers flipping is realistic? Go ahead and post some more questions, guys. A little low on questions this week. What's wrong with you guys? I don't see old Tuck out there. It's getting weak. Justin Rogers. He's the lineman from Oak Park, the number 1 recruit in the state of Michigan this year, number 14 player in the country by Rivals.com. He committed to Kentucky several months ago. He's visited Michigan State a few times. Some of you already know this, but I'm saying this for people that might not be aware of who he is. So he visited Michigan State a couple weeks ago for a basketball game. I think he was in town a couple days ago for the Duke game too. Pretty sure he was. I didn't totally confirm that, but I'm pretty sure that was the case. Michigan State is, they're in there. They're trying to flip him. Michigan State's pretty desperate for some good news. Some good news on the recruiting front, too. So, Michigan State's always going to go hard after a guy like something like that. But in the current climate, the current situation, Michigan State's compelled to go as hard as they can right now for this guy. I don't know what that all means, but, his mom came on one of the visits and likes it. Staying closer to home means something, obviously. That's something in Michigan State's favor, but getting him pried away from Kentucky is going to be difficult. Kentucky is working on all the angles, as you can imagine. They're trying to get all their propaganda going, and they've got some to sell. So it's a hard one. Right now, it's one of those deals where only Justin knows, but he's showing up, so his feet are telling us something. The fact that his feet were here and have been here a few times, that tells us something. So you're asking about the odds. What are the chances? Did I give a percentage a minute ago? They've got a chance. I would still favor Kentucky right now because he's a Kentucky commitment. It's stated that way. I just think it's going to be hard to... I would just favor them right now. As you know, it seems like whenever Michigan State has a commitment and other schools come after him come after a player to try to flip that player, it seems like more than 50% of the time Michigan State ends up losing that player. Sometimes Michigan State loses their taste in that player. It's not the case this time with Kentucky. They want the kid badly. Michigan State's going after him. The odds, I'm going to say less than 50% right now, I'm thinking. Just because I'll have to see it to believe it. And I know a few weeks ago, Michigan State was feeling pretty good about it, like they had a good shot. That's why they're putting in all this time, but it's going to be difficult. But it's recruiting season. We've got signing day coming up. 2 weeks? On the 17th. 13 days away. So that much time left to get that one squared away. So let's go through some of these questions. We'll wrap this one up. It'll be a shorter one, but we'll get to some of these questions to clear the question board here. All right, 428 Grove Street from Chicagoland. It's good to have you posting again. He says, with the poor play and the subpar recruiting, program optimism seems very low amongst the fan base. Making no changes to the staff would be the most tone-deaf move in Michigan State history, he says. Is there a chance that the entire staff returns? If not, why are they out recruiting right now? Won't sending lame duck assistants to meet coaches and players hurt Michigan State in the future? And that's his question. Because he's on the message board a lot, and he sees that Michigan State's coaches are out recruiting. They're out tweeting. And it's clear that a lot of the coaches are out there doing a lot of recruiting. There's some that I don't know if I've seen them a lot. There's some that I've not seen mentioned. I might be wrong, but I've not seen some of the others. I mean, we've seen Staten out there. We've seen several of them. Treadwell. There's two ways to look at it. There's a chance that one or two, I think, possibly could semi-retire and be moved up to an analyst position, possibly. That might be one explanation. Someone like Bowman and Treadwell, maybe they do that. I don't know. It's a tough business, and sometimes recruits and assistant coaches finish a recruiting cycle, sign the players, and then the assistant coaches get fired. I think that only happened maybe once with Michigan State with Ted Gill. It's not something head coaches like to do. It's not something Michigan State has done, obviously. Michigan State stood pat last year, and Mark D'Antonio took a lot of criticism for it, especially once the 2019 season began and the offense remained unsuccessful for various reasons. We've gone over those in the past. Injuries on the offensive line, injuries at wide receiver, not the greatest pool of talent at wide receiver, and the quarterback didn't quite come along. He didn't snap back into his sophomore level of play and then some. He's been more erratic maybe than he was as a sophomore, possibly because the offensive line and the receivers are not the same, and the running backs too. Although Elijah Collins became a good one, third team All Big Ten this year. Congratulations to Elijah Collins on that. But as far as the assistant coaches, I do think that there'll be some changes, one or two, maybe even three changes in staff. So that can still happen after signing day. I realize there are some staffs that have already cut loose some assistant coaches. Northwestern fired their offensive coordinator. Herm Edwards at Arizona State fired his entire offensive staff, or a lot of them. So I realize that's happened in some other places. Could have happened at Michigan State. It's not happened yet. So if they keep all the staff members, as you said, you think it would be the most tone-deaf move in MSU history? I can think of some other things in MSU history that were pretty tone-deaf. But in terms of feeling the political winds, and you are part of that, I don't disagree with you that they are in the entertainment business. They're in the winning business too. And these are political decisions to keep the political winds settled. That's part of it. But basically, you want to put together a coaching staff that you think, as a head coach, is your best chance to give you a chance to win, regardless of the politics. Especially if you are as established as D'Antonio is, who next year, if they go 4-8 and he gets fired, he might just ride off and be comfortable with that. I don't know. I know you wouldn't. I know D'Antonio wouldn't be comfortable with that right now, but he might stay loyal and go that route. I don't think he will. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 changes. You're right, though. The fact that they're out there still recruiting makes it a little bit different. We will see. And you also ask, will possibly some of them move into an analyst role? I think that is possible. You're interested to see what's going to happen. I'm interested to see what's going to happen. D'Antonio's not going to tell any of us. He'll probably share some information maybe with his wife, maybe with Bowman and Tressel, some of his closest confidants, but not many people are going to know. Another football question here from Jambo81 out of Ira Township, Michigan, which I think is on the north shore of Lake St. Clair. Before I get to Ira's question, or Jambo's question, throw some more questions down here on the YouTube area, down here in the YouTube chat area. We will field some of those questions. He wants to talk football. Looking ahead, he says, with running backs Collins, Williams, and Brandon Wright all in the same class eligibility, do you see ways the coaching staff can utilize all 3 backs in future seasons? Good question. You got 3 guys that are all going to be sophomores next year. So now you're getting into that Edwin Baker, Le'Veon Bell, Larry Caper situation. It's really hard to use all 3, right? Really hard. When Michigan State signed Anthony Williams, they were thinking wide receiver first. I think. Yeah, they're thinking wide receiver first. Kind of an R.J. Shelton type of wide receiver. R.J. Shelton was a running back in high school, became a really good wide receiver at Michigan State. Williams was a running back. They worked him out at wide receiver, and that was kind of the plan. And then on signing day, you might remember Aaron Brown, running back, decided to sign with Rutgers. So they lost Aaron Brown. Aaron Brown was the guy they thought would be the running back. Kind of the jump cut quick acceleration running back in the class. They lost Aaron Young. They already had Anthony Williams, so they kind of changed what their plan was for Anthony Williams. And he was pretty serviceable this year as a true freshman. No huge plays, but in the last game against Maryland, he had his biggest play of the season on a 3rd and medium, maybe 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. Michigan State ran a speed option pitch to Williams. Williams it wasn't the most accurate pitch. Caught it here, tucked it, picked up the first down. 4 more yards after contact, gained about 10 yards on that. Big first down. I think that was the drive in which Michigan State went, kicked a field goal to tie the game 16-16 with about 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, maybe 8 minutes to go, maybe 9 minutes to go. Michigan State's second to last drive. Big third down conversion. Anthony Williams, his biggest play of the year, needed it. So that was a nice play for him. But how do they handle all 3 of these guys? Plus you have Jordan Simmons coming in from Georgia. McEachern, Georgia. I think that's how you say it. And he's looking good. He had a good senior year. Michigan State's got to go ahead and sign Simmons. Simmons is tweeting out to other commitments and also to Allante Brown, trying to encourage him to become a Spartan. I know some other schools, including LSU, are still looking at Simmons, but LSU is having such a great year that, Simmons is good, but, LSU can recruit the Fortnets and those type of guys right now. So Michigan State's hoping they still get Simmons. Got some work to do there. I think they will get Simmons. So I think Simmons comes in as a running back, more talented than these guys, in my opinion. Would he redshirt? I don't know. Probably going to have to play. Brandon Wright, strong kid. Interesting that they went to Brandon Wright down the stretch against Maryland. Collins was a little dinged up with a little bit of an ankle sprain. Played through it, but not himself. They went with Williams on that speed option pitch. Chose the right running back for that play call. Worked out for them real well. But when it came down to Michigan State trying to get a first down at the end of the game, ended up not getting the first down and kicking a field goal and then having to hold on defense. But a first down wins the game for you. They went to Brandon Wright. Now, the offensive line did not do its job in those situations. But interesting that Brandon Wright is the guy they went to with the ball in that situation. So they think highly of Brandon Wright, and he's had some good yards through contact during his time at Michigan State already. So all 3 of those guys have shown a few things. Can you play all 3 of them? That's going to be difficult. That's why I think Williams wouldn't be surprised if he heads back out to wide receiver, maybe in the spring, maybe doing both. You raise a good question, though. That's going to be difficult to deal with. All right, let's go back to a basketball question. Spefton from East Lansing says, what do you think happened to Aaron Henry? All right, I mentioned some of that. Duke did a good job with denial defense, and then when he did get the ball, to keep him from getting the ball or make it more difficult for him to get the ball. And if he got the ball, it wouldn't be in the most ideal angle and point of entry for him to get it. That was one thing, made it harder for him to get the ball. And then when he did get it, they took away his drive by flashing extra defenders at him. So Aaron, Michigan State played with a lot of anxiety, a lot of want to, and not a lot of looseness. In the future, when they see pressure defense against Purdue and some of these other teams, without all that attention, and that was a lot of attention that game. It's good to grow from it because they kind of wilted a little bit. When it happens again, you don't need everybody to try to hit home runs all the time. Like Izzo says, don't worry about hitting triples, just hit singles. Aaron Henry, when you get it, drive, draw, become a passer. He can do it. There's a lot of pressure on him to become Batman. You can do it with the pass, too. I think they're going to be okay. I think basketball, they're going to be fine. Now, Big Ten is tough. Ohio State looks great. Maryland looks great. Purdue blew out Virginia. Michigan looked good. Indiana looks good. Looked real good against Florida State. They're undefeated. Big Ten is going to be tougher this year than it was last year. So chances of winning the Big Ten is going to be real tough. There's going to be some losses, going to be some ugly losses. But in time, I think Malik Hall will dial into this role. I think Aaron Henry's going to come around and do his part. Tillman showed improvement coming out of Hawaii. I think he's going to settle in. Rocket Watts is going to be fine. I know he's missing shots right now, but the defense is good. Michigan State's first basket of the game, real nice play by Rocket Watts, making a play with a drive, dribble, and a little duck in pass to Xavier Tillman. We remember also a time when Rocket Watts was bringing it up in transition, and he was back tipped, had the ball stolen by Trey Jones up ahead, I think, to Delorier for a dunk. Everybody remembers him getting the ball stolen from him. But a few seconds earlier, he did a really great job stealing it, I think, from Trey Jones. A plus defensive play to get it and push. Left the ball out to the side, which used to be one of Judd Heathcote's pet peeves. He's a freshman. He's going to have to learn those things. But he's competing on defense, and he's running the floor, and he's doing everything with some good physical strength and quickness. Missing some shots, but I think those shots will come. He's going to be fine. Problem is they're relying so much on these freshmen, Watts and Hall. I know a lot of teams rely on freshmen and get some good things from freshmen. But Michigan State's asking so much from these guys that what happens in February. You start hitting that freshman wall. You've heard about it. You've read about it. You probably have not experienced it. I've not experienced it, but that's what they say. And sometimes you will see decrease in productivity and effectiveness freshman year. So the more that Michigan State is leaning on Malik Hall to be the next Kenny Goings and Rocket Watts to be some version of the McQuaid role, that gas tank's going to get tapped. And however good they are January 10th, by February 10th, it could start to flicker. So that's a problem Michigan State's going to encounter later. But a lot of work to do. Obviously, they weren't the number one team in the country. I never thought they were. I've posted that on the message board. Some of you may have bought into that, and that's fine if you did. I just know that there was no way that this team early in the year was going to be as good as they were in March. Just not going to be as good as they were in March. I don't know who number one was. Maybe it's Louisville. I don't know. But I just know it wasn't going to be Michigan State, especially when they lost Langford. A lot of time, a lot of things that they have to get straightened out. And Izzo is one of the great ones at getting those things straightened out. So the fact that they're 5-3 right now, they beat Rutgers on Sunday. They get to 6-3. There'll be some tough games. There'll be some losses. But Izzo, he does a great job of getting everything ironed out. And there's a lot of ironing to do, but they've got some material to work with. So it's one of those old school Michigan State seasons. Going to have patience. Some of those X factors, though. Got to wonder and worry about Cassius Winston. What's going on with him? Don't know where he's going to be. Once Kithier takes the mask off, I think he can be a pretty good power forward coming off the bench. Not a starter that's going to play 28 minutes for you. The mask, I think, has affected his hands and affected his defense. In Maui, a few times, he lost his man on defense because the peripheral vision, you can see, it's just not as good as it should be or can be. He takes that off. He comes back. He'll be fine. Not a starter, not a guy that's going to guard Vernon Carey, but a guy that can come in and give you a few things. Sticking with basketball. DJ Birmingham out of Fort Collins, Colorado, he asks, he says, I know he's been hurt, but I have been surprised by the lack of productivity and playing time for Kyle Arns. Is it his injury that is really slowing him down? Do you see him working back to a more productive senior leader as the season goes on? That's from DJ Birmingham from Fort Collins, Colorado. Thanks for posting, first of all. Arns, I was at practice last Sunday, and Arns was one of the guys that I was most impressed with. Hitting shots and really vocal, really supportively vocal for Rocket Watts, for Marcus Bingham, for everybody. Kind of that Colby Wallenman type of thing. He's really good at that. And if you watched the Duke game, there was a time when Aaron Henry was benched. I think it might have been at the outset of the second half when Aaron Henry did not start the second half. If you look on the bench, Kyle Arns was there with his arm around Aaron Henry, talking to him, pep talk, Arns is a valuable member of this team, and he's got some horsepower. He can jump. He goes after it. He's a good shooter, which they need. Yes, I'm surprised that there's not been more productivity from him especially after watching him in practice on Sunday. That was one of my takeaways from practice on Sunday, is that Arns is gaining some traction. He's going to make an impact. Then you get to Tuesday, and the first 12 minutes goes by, and he's not on the court. He comes out, comes in, plays a little bit, had a turnover, caught a ball in the corner, and threw it down to Kithier, steal, dunk. That's a KYP situation. Like Judd used to say, KYP, know your personnel. You got Kithier right here. They're both 18 feet from the basket. It's not like a little 4-foot pass to Kithier that Kithier's going to turn around and go Dirk Nowitzki with it or anything. That pass was not worth it. As soon as Kyle let it go, he knew it. Anyway, the pressure defense got to him again on that one. So later on, Arns was driving, was fouled, wasn't called, fell, hurt his back. You could see him lip the words. He hurt his back. So he got back up, finished the play, and he sat. And I can't remember. He might have sat for the rest of the game. That was the back injury that hurt him last year. My thought is maybe something happened in practice on Monday because he looked good on Sunday, didn't play much on Tuesday till later, hurt his back. I didn't ask Izzo, but I'm guessing he may have hurt himself on Monday again. And Arns is a guy that has a lot to offer, but basically he's been injured every year since 7th grade. By the way, if you go back and watch that and you're into lip reading, when Izzo got that technical foul, he looked at Borowski, and I meant to get into this when the question from Sparty from South Carolina about Borowski earlier, but go back and watch that, rewind that, and look at Izzo. When he says to Borowski after he gets the technical foul, he looks at him and he says, "You suck." And then he says, again, PG rated here. He says, "You suck. You effing suck." Except he didn't say effing. Go back and look at it. So after he got his technical, Izzo got his word in. And it wasn't just that was a bad call. It was that what he thought of him as an official. So hitting him professionally. Interesting. Basketball. K. Lucas asking, any hoops recruiting news and heard anything lately? You probably saw posted that Izzo, I think, is going to go see Kareem Maine this Friday. He's a point guard from Montreal. Michigan State basically just getting started with him, but with the Terry thing having deteriorated at Michigan State, pretty much moving on at this point. Not totally moving on. I mean, I heard that there was some progress a couple weeks ago, but Michigan State is going to be doing that Friday with Kareem Maine. As far as the players that were at the Duke game, I'm still looking into that to confirm that. But you know who the big guns are in state for 2021, and Michigan State continues to watch them. And when their seasons start, State will be watching Kobe Buffkin from Grand Rapids, 6'4", ranked number 60 player in the country. A lot of talent there. Jaden Aitkins, 6'3", out of Farmington, 2021, good guard. A lot of talent there. You know that. And Pierre Brooks, 6'5", out of Detroit, Frederick Douglass. All juniors, all in state. Michigan State likes all of them. State's going to get, I think, at least one of them. Hey, Wolverines will probably be in on getting at least one of them. Recruiting is going to be interesting. Michigan State's in with Max Christie really well out of Rolling Meadows, Illinois. I mean, a top 20 type of guy nationally. Tall guy with a lot of skill. Michigan State's in good with him. Speaking of good, this weekend for the Rutgers game, I'm sure you saw it posted. Luke Good, a 6'6" wing out of Fort Wayne, supposed to be in the Michigan State game this Sunday. He's a top 100 type of guy. But I've not heard anything in terms of movement toward commitments with any of those guys. But Michigan State doing a lot of work. And, Doug Wojcik is doing a lot with recruiting now in terms of helping coordinate things. And I think it had an impact with some of the guys that got last year. And I think it's going to pay some dividends in a different type of way for Michigan State recruiting. About ready to wrap it up. We're an hour in right now. I'll go to these football questions, then we'll get to the YouTube questions and wrap it up. Appreciate everybody coming in for SpartanMag.com live to check us out, Spartan Mag Live. We always want to tell you to tell your friends about SpartanMag.com. And it makes a great gift idea for the holiday season. So those of you that want to bring your friends to the underground bunker, buy them a subscription, a gift subscription. Go to SpartanMag.com. You can see the area to buy a gift subscription. You can send them an email message. You can get a subscription, enter their email address in, and get the $75 Adidas card for yourself also. Hint. Appreciate your support. MSU Spartan 777 out of New Hudson, Michigan. He says, what would you think the percentages, the likelihood is of Cole Chewins coming back next year? Cole Chewins missed the year with a back injury. I spoke with him after practice last week, and he's hoping and planning to come back next year. He doesn't know how his back is going to respond, but he's undergoing rehab right now. He's going to have his master's degree by then, but he says, hey, I'm a football player. I want to play. He doesn't want to go out like this. So my percentage would be based on how I think his back is going to react. Truth is, his back was getting better in like late September into October, and he was working back on the practice field, and it was looking like he was within 2 weeks of coming back, but then had a relapse and then missed the season. So percentages, 15%. How's that? But he wants to, and he could help. He also asks, who do you think Michigan State's starting linebackers will be next year? I think, they ended the season with Tyreek Thompson at middle linebacker. Antoine Simmons played middle linebacker also for a couple weeks. But they like Simmons' speed at the slot. But Simmons is, he's nicely physical inside too. I think Noah Harvey becomes the middle linebacker next year. And Simmons could play star or money. It's going to depend on who becomes their number 3 linebacker. Is the number 3 linebacker Jess Lord Boateng or Chase Klein? If it's Boateng is more of a star linebacker, I think. He could play the star, so that would put Simmons at money. But if Klein is the 3rd best linebacker, Klein is not a star. Klein is a money linebacker. So if Klein becomes one of the top 3, then that moves Simmons to star. Does that make sense? That's the way I look at that one. Pete in Atlanta, Georgia says, how about a shout out to the Davison Cardinals? Pete's in Atlanta, but he's supporting his high school, Davison, Michigan, which is over there by Flint. They won a state title this year, I think Division II. So here it is. Shout out to Davison Cardinals. Great job, Davison Cardinals. By the way, Davison Cardinals, they've got a quarterback, a junior, by the name of Brendan Sullivan. Kenny Jordan did a story on him for SpartanMag.com, a short story maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. And Brendan Sullivan went out and led his team to a state championship. So good job by Kenny Jordan having an eye on that one. Michigan State has been in contact with him. They've been involved. I would anticipate Brendan Sullivan being a guy that goes to a lot of the camps and offers will start rolling in before the camps. I'm not sure. But I would anticipate him being at Michigan State's camp, playing for a scholarship offer, I would think, this summer. One more football question, and then we will clean out the YouTube area and call it a night. Appreciate everybody hanging in with us. Got off to a late start. It's already 10:30 Eastern time as we record this. Appreciate everybody staying up with us. Some of you guys are tired from staying up for that basketball game Tuesday night, I know. Appreciate you being here. All right. Question number 9. I don't know who posted this. I didn't write it down. About the transfer portal. This is all right, I'll go ahead and throw it out here. Transfer portal. Do you have any thoughts about what happens to these players after the season? I believe D'Antonio said that there were about 345 players in the transfer portal currently. With only 130 FBS teams, either 2/3 of these kids end up at FCS schools, or every team just ends up trading players. What happens if these kids don't get picked up by their next coach or by the next school of choice? Could they re-enroll at their current school? Interesting that these numbers produce an average of about 3 players per team in the portal. You're right. It has, the transfers have always been a part of college football, but it seems like this has glorified it and made it a little easier to transfer. Also, I had a former player tell me that it's easier for these guys to transfer because one of the deterrents against transferring, for better or for worse, in the past used to be the point at which that player would go in to the coach's office and tell the coach face to face, I want to transfer. That's a hard conversation for a player to have. And I'm sure there were a lot of players out there that wanted to transfer at some point but never brought themselves to go to the office to have that discussion. Now they don't have to go to the office and have that discussion. They just enter the portal and they in it, and they may never talk to the coach again. Easier to do that. To avoid that face-to-face, I don't want to say confrontation, but the face-to-face meeting. So 3 players per team. That's interesting that you did the math on that to figure that out. That is a lot, and it has become more fashionable. In some ways, it's good for the freedom of the players. In some ways, they will end up hurting themselves, which is the Tom Izzo theory and the Tom Izzo argument that loose transfer rules are going to hurt way more people than it'll help. It's going to hurt way more players than it'll help. For reasons you said, and you hear this a lot from, because there's transfer portals in the women's sports too, and you're hearing that, Izzo hears from women's coaches that there are girls that enter the transfer portal, leave their scholarship behind, and don't end up getting a scholarship anywhere else, and then they can't go back, then they ended up with no scholarship at all. The coaches are saying that's going to happen a lot. I don't know of any specific examples of that, but they say that is going to happen a lot. Anyway, that doesn't have a lot to do with Michigan State per se. That's just the nature of college football, college sports right now. A couple questions here in the YouTube area. Ed Francis asks, Allante Brown and Justin Rogers flip would be a boon for MSU. Allante Brown, the little athletic kid originally from Chicago Simeon Prep School in Connecticut. Now, recently got an offer from Nebraska. I texted him, direct message actually, messaged him 2 days ago to ask him about his in-home visit with D'Antonio and Treadwell. And I said, how did it go? And he said, it was great, with an exclamation point. It was great, he said. So not a guy that gives a lot of words on what's going on with his recruitment, but Michigan State's in there. He's an explosive athlete. And Michigan State's making him a priority. It's going to be interesting to see if they end up getting him. Some of you may remember, some of you don't, Allante Brown committed to Michigan State last year. Then he took an official visit to Florida State. When that happened, Michigan State backed off. Didn't want him anymore. You're going to visit Florida State? We're out. Florida State didn't get him. Maybe backed off. I don't know. Texas Tech signed him. Then he didn't qualify. Spent a year in prep school. I was talking to Tim O'Halloran about it. Tim O'Halloran, that's Edgy Tim. He's the Rivals.com guy, specializing in Illinois recruiting, especially Chicago recruiting. He says that Allante Brown really had a really tough home situation, really difficult home situation in Chicago. And the best thing for him was to move out, go to prep school, get things straightened out that way. So in terms of not qualifying, there were some circumstances there. So Michigan State's back in recruiting him again. A lot of other schools are as well. I've seen some people rank him as one of the best prep school prospects in the country. I think I saw someone have him number 1 in the country. I don't think prep schools, 10, 15 years ago, I think there were more players in prep schools going the prep school route. Not as many these days, I don't think. I could be wrong about that. But some people have him number 1 in the country. All right. Aram Ohanian says, does the Allante Brown recruitment feel like a we led too long type of recruitment where he appears to be looking for something else? Maybe so. And, if you're referencing that, that I've said over the years that sometimes it's not good to be the leader for more than 3 or 4 months. Because if you're the leader for 3 or 4 months and you don't get a commitment, then they are looking for something else. And maybe the grass isn't completely green with the leader. Yes, I'll say it is starting to look that way. If they don't end up getting him, this will be another one in that category, because 3 or 4 months ago, it looked like a slam dunk he was going to go to Michigan State with some of the communication he had with Corey Robinson and Spartan Insight. Corey Robinson doing a great job with recruiting, covering Michigan State recruiting over at SpartanMag.com. Go check it out at the message board over there. He's posting on the message board frequently about the comings and goings of recruiting, where Michigan State coaches are visiting, which recruits are being visited, which ones are visiting Michigan State, and so forth. But Allante Brown made it pretty clear that State was in real good shape a few months ago, but here's Michigan State still trying to finish, and now he's going to visit Nebraska. And yeah, I would put it in that category of sometimes after a long time you get in the friend zone. Michigan State might just perpetually be in the friend zone with Allante Brown. 13 days to go. We'll see. Anthony Gilmore says, what are the odds of Gabe Brown cracking the starting rotation? He can shoot, defend, has length. That's from Tony in Detroit. All right, thanks, Tony. Anthony Gilmore. I think there's a good start that Gabe Brown starts this Sunday against Rutgers. After a loss, Izzo likes to shuffle up the starting lineup almost always. And Aaron Henry, with his difficult outing, didn't start the second half. Izzo was not pleased about some of those things. So, yeah, I think there's a good chance Aaron Henry does not start in this game. I think Gabe Brown will. David White says, Jim, what is your pulse on the overall direction of the university and the athletic department? It feels like the university is sliding back to the era of mediocrity of the 90s and early 2000s. Dave, I think you're right. I think there's reason to be concerned about that. When you get some of the changes in personnel from the administrative standpoint, new president, new athletic director. The new president did not hire the new athletic director. The thing about the athletic director, I sense that a lot of Michigan State fans are not happy with Bill Beekman. I don't know why, because Beekman, I don't know if he's done anything that anyone dislikes. He's kind of, he's kind of a milquetoast guy publicly, but it's my understanding that behind the scenes, he gets after it a little bit. I've not seen that, but I've heard that he's administratively on it behind the scenes. I'll ask around a little bit more, and I look forward to talking to him and people, maybe not him, but people in the administration for more information on that, more of a pulse, now that he's been the AD for 18 months or whatever. But you have to remember that Beekman was pretty much hired by D'Antonio and Izzo. They were the ones that got together and said, we have a chance to hire our own AD rather than having it go out to who knows who to make the decision. D'Antonio liked him well enough. Izzo liked him well enough as the interim AD. Engler was the president at the time. They went to Engler. They got it done. So if you don't like Beekman, there's two guys right there that were pretty important at the time, Izzo and D'Antonio, that did like him. So I'll wait and see how everything goes with Beekman going forward when he has big decisions to make in terms of hiring coaches or other decisions. So far, I can't think of any decisions he's made that I think were controversial or off the mark. He's not a guy that's out there as a big self-promoter, out there out front, fanning a lot of flames and stuff. His background was that as an administrator, and that's kind of the way he goes. He delegates. I asked a little bit, last year behind the scenes, I asked a little bit about, for instance, the Champions Classic. Last year, that contract expired, and ESPN did not have to hang on to Michigan State as one of the 4 schools in the Champions Classic. But the deal got done. So who did the deal? Beekman, I think, delegated it. Basically, it was Kevin Pauga and Tom Izzo that got that one done. And that's a big one. I mean, you see the positive press and ramifications that come from Michigan State being involved with Kansas and Duke and Kentucky every year to kick off the basketball season. This year, in the past, the Champions Classic stood alone as the only basketball of the night. Now there's other games played on that night, so it loses a little bit of the sizzle. But it's a big deal for Michigan State to hang on to that, and let the record show that Michigan State was able to hang on to that contract under Beekman's watch. Paul Shager is another guy that's very important in terms of outreach and promotions. Michigan State, things continue to go forward with Fox being their licensing partner, not licensing, but promotions partner, marketing partner. That has created some change. You notice it on game day with as many commercials as are done over the public address system. So as of now, there's no big decision that I would classify as being a bad one or a controversial one. So right now, there's the potential of the athletic department going downward, like you're talking about in the 90s and 2000s. So it's up to Beekman to keep that ship righted. Izzo's going to have a hand in that. Pauga's a riser. Shager's a riser. Shager sees that they need to do some things with the stadium. That'll cost some money, but things need to be done there. The thing that would make it easier for everyone is if Michigan State goes out and wins 8 or 9 football games next year. Of course, a lot of you are open for 10 or more, but if they get in a situation where they only win 4 or 5 next year, which is possible, and the coaching job comes open one way or another, then it's on. Then you're going to find out whether things could revert back to the 90s or if they can plant a post foot and step forward, as D'Antonio likes to say. Kirk Baldwin, 1 or 2 staff changes won't move the needle. He needs at least 5 new coaches, Kirk says. All right. Duly noted from Kirk Baldwin. All right. Rob South says, selfishly, I want us in the Quick Lane Bowl, but it's looking like the Pinstripe Bowl. Would we look to play another quarterback in that game, or is it all Lewerke? I think they would play another quarterback in that game. I think once you're into the bowl game, you've already gotten your 3 weeks of bowl practices that they wanted so badly, and they will have already had the chance to play an extra game. That's all been acquired. Now that you're in the bowl game, make the best out of it. Part of making the best out of it is playing a backup quarterback. In the past, not a lot of coaches have done that, but Mark D'Antonio is one who has done that. You know that, right? Was it year 2 with Brian Hoyer when they played Georgia in the Capital One Bowl? I think it was the Capital One Bowl. That was the first time they played Georgia. D'Antonio told us the day before the game in the last press conference before the bowl game, he said, I'm going to play Kirk Cousins at some point in this game, probably in the second quarter. Just want to let you guys know that so that when it happens, it's not a case of Brian Hoyer getting pulled. We just want next year's starter to get some experience. So they did it then. They did that. And then they planned to do it in the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl also in 2012 when, well, I guess Andrew Maxwell was not a senior, but they played Connor Cook as a freshman. Remember that? Well, that Michigan State got off to like a 16-0 deficit and had to really scrap and scrounge to get back into that game. They finally did, and then things flatlined a little bit. And you remember that Connor Cook, as a freshman, quarterbacked the game-winning drive. Now, in other games, Kirk Cousins was a senior in 2011 when they beat Georgia in the Outback Bowl. And that was Cousins, right? So Maxwell was going to be the next year's coach or next year's quarterback. They didn't play Maxwell that day, I don't think. Again, Georgia got out to like a 14-0 lead, 16-0 lead at halftime. And Michigan State had to like scrounge down and play perfect to try to stay in that game. Came back and won the game in heroic fashion. One of the great wins in postseason history for Michigan State. I think they would have liked to have played Maxwell that day, but they couldn't because they got off to a tough start. So there have been other times when he's wanted to and has not been able to. Now, this would be one of those situations, and you know what? Odds are I think that that's probably going to happen. I'll bet that in the bowl game that they will play. So then the question is, who's it going to be, Lombardi or Day? I've got to hit the screen there because I'm losing power. We all know what Lombardi can do, and he's played in some games this year in some mop-up situations. I thought he looked okay in the Wisconsin game. Didn't look so good in Penn State game, but the ball was wet and there was tough conditions to throw it. And he's not a guy with big hands, so the wet football is not good. for him. We know what Lombardi can do. I do think he has improved, but Theo Day needs to get on the field. They need him to get on the field, right? Would not shock me if Theo Day plays in the bowl game. That'll be a question that we will pose to D'Antonio if they have a bowl media day this year. They did not have one last year. Probably because I've got some theories about that. I think that they didn't want D'Antonio to. D'Antonio didn't. I don't know. I won't speculate, but there was a lot of us that were wondering about the coaching situation, and he never had to answer those questions at that time, but he did later. Well, there'll be a signing day press conference in 2 weeks. Will they morph that together with as a bowl media day? Maybe they will. Rob South already did his question. Noah Conley says, do you think Josh Langford will come back from his injury? Because this team needs him right now. Izzo said he is not counting on it. Izzo's not counting on it. I'm not counting on it. My guess is he doesn't come back. My guess is they take a look at it. Maybe he attempts to come back. And I have my doubts. There's also a chance they look at it in January and decide to shut him down. And he might decide he wants to gear things toward a professional career at some point overseas next year. I'm not counting on it. I don't think Michigan State is either. Bradley Cruz says, who's the most interesting matchup out of the bowl projections? BC, Florida State, Virginia Tech, or North Carolina? I think Florida State. But it sounds like Florida State might be in line to go to the Independence Bowl in Shreveport. But, yeah, Florida State brings more name brand recognition, more cachet. You play Florida State in Detroit in the Quick Lane Bowl, December 26th. That'd be fun, right? Play Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, or North Carolina in New York City. That'd be a game, too. But I would say Florida State. Boston College is a lame duck situation. They fired Adazio. Pittsburgh, you didn't list Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh with the Pat Narduzzi thing, that would be interesting. I'd rather not play Pittsburgh, though. I mean, I enjoy watching Pittsburgh. They huddle. They go I formation. They're old school. I respect that. But there's a chance that if Michigan State plays Pittsburgh, it might not be a real pretty game. Michigan State could use a pretty game. And it would be nice for Michigan State to provide some of that beauty. Anthony Gilmore, Jim, what were your thoughts going into the season regarding Trayvon Morgan? Sidelined by injury, but was a guy I was pretty interested to see play this year. Yes, Trayvon Morgan, redshirted. He's a big wide receiver from Youngstown Mooney, I think. Cardinal Mooney, I think. Ohio kid, big wide receiver. Was injured as a junior. Had a huge senior year, player of the year in his conference and all that stuff. Big wide receiver. Ended up becoming a 4-star in the Rivals.com ratings. Yeah, I was looking forward to seeing if he could help this year, but then he became injured. Like, I think, was it before August camp started? So it's a guy that's had some problems with injury. And he had problems here at Michigan State right off the bat with injury. So that trend is not looking good. But I've seen him in the hallway over the Scandalera Center, and he is the biggest wide receiver I have ever seen in my life. This way and that way. Just a big dude. If they can get him on the field and he can run, that's a monster type wide receiver that they can make good use of. You have to hope, if you're a Michigan State fan, things come along for him. So I've not heard much. If they get into bowl practice, could he get on the field? That'd be interesting to see. I don't know. It's a good question. I'll look into that if I remember to ask that question. Sometimes we don't get time to ask all the questions I'd like to ask. Kirk Baldwin with another one. I like Kithier, but he looks small out there. He must be closer to 6'5", not nearly 6'8". You're probably right. He might be 6'7", but a lot of people are going to look small against Vernon Carey. And he's not big enough to guard Vernon Carey, as you saw. But he can bang around and do some things and provide some stuff. And at some point, I think in his career, he'll be able to shoot reasonably well, too. He made a three-pointer earlier in the season. But now with the mask on, a lot of his skills are watered down. But at some point, I think he can become, maybe a Brian Cardinal type of guy. Not that good, but that type of guy. Wrapping it up here. Tyler Miller says, even though we got Noah Kim, is State looking at the River Rouge quarterback from Bear Lake on M72, Michigan? Not that I know of. I mean, they will still be looking at quarterbacks for walk-ons, and I'm sure they will bring in a walk-on quarterback from somewhere. But I've got all those state championship games on my DVR. I've got to watch those. I'm behind on my viewing. It just piles up, but it's a good problem to have. Bradley Cruz, do you plan on continuing hosting these discussions through the basketball season? Yes, I do, and I wish I would have had more specifics on some of my thoughts on that Duke game, because when they lose is when the things are the most most pertinent to talk about. And some of my macro thoughts on it is that Duke, among other things, is just way ahead of Michigan State defensively right now. Way ahead of Michigan State defensively. But with Izzo, that's not going to stay the case. Michigan State will catch up defensively. The great thing about Duke, and I mentioned earlier, they did a great job denying passing lanes and disrupting the DHOs, the dribble handoffs. They were able to get out there and pressure those things, yet they did not get beat backdoor. Usually when Michigan State plays a team that's pressuring you, they do a real good job of beating them backdoor. And Michigan State early in the game, as attempted pressure releases, tried to send Aaron Henry backdoor. And Duke defended it well. So now he goes backdoor. He doesn't get it. He goes on the other side. Now he's kind of out of the play for a while. So Michigan State tried to go backdoor a couple times. Duke, to their credit, pressure defense. Great scouting report on Winston and Henry to send 4 eyes at both of those guys. Take the ball out of their hands. Or not give them the middle of the floor if they're doing a side ball screen. Leaving people. Duke left people to stop Henry and to stop Winston when they started to drive. They left Kithier. They left Malik Hall. That's what Michigan State did against Iggy Brasdakis last year of Michigan, because Brasdakis was great for his own offense off the dribble, finishing at the rim, but he was a terrible passer. He wouldn't pass the ball at all. To him, when he got the ball, it was him in the rim. That's all he saw, him in the rim in a tunnel vision. So Michigan State McQuaid would leave his man, and Brasdakis would have no idea that someone else was open. That's one of the ways that Michigan State handcuffed Michigan. Well, Duke did that to Michigan State the other night. When Izzo said we got outcoached, he knew it. Duke was prepared offensively and defensively with some new wrinkles X and O's wise. Krzyzewski with his 1,000 wins was all up to the reputation on that night. And Izzo tipped his hat. Michigan State's going to get better on defense. They will improve as they get to know each other better. So if everybody can get it out of their mind that Michigan State was preseason number 1 and get over the disappointment and start looking at it like a usual Michigan State season, and remember that when Michigan State won the regional last year and went to the Final Four, Malik Hall was not on the court. Rocket Watts was not on the court. Kithier was rarely on the court. Bingham was not on the court. So when these guys are on the court, don't automatically assume that they are Final Four material just like that. Does that make sense? Calm down. Have some dip. Now, a couple more here. Bradley asks, do I continue to have these discussions during the basketball season? Yeah, we probably will if you want to. If you guys want to have these, post on the board that you want to do the Spartan Mag Lives, probably on Monday nights, maybe Tuesdays. Maybe we'll do it right after the Izzo show on Mondays. It depends on whether they're playing on Mondays or if there's interviews on Mondays. Also depends on me driving around town with my kids. I'm not free on Mondays in this semester for various reasons. Last question from Patrick Beatty. What is the latest speculation on potential coaching changes? Also, is MSU going to relook at their recruiting strategy and consider grad transfers more? These are very popular questions. Everybody always asks about the coaching changes and the transfer portal. So transfers and grad transfer. Grad transfers, tight end and offensive line, I'm hearing. offensive tackle, maybe specifically, is a couple of areas they're looking. And as far as coaching changes, everybody wants to know that. And you can see that fans want coaching changes. Obviously, fans, going back to last year, see assistant coaching changes as a sign of potential progress, as a sign of working on problems. Otherwise, if you don't change coaches, fans see that as a sign that the problems are not going to get changed, are not going to get fixed. I'm not sure the latter is true, but like I said, this is a political climate, and at some point, football coaches are like political figures. To be a head football coach at a big rig like Michigan State, a big public institution, part of your job is to be like a politician, like it or not. And right now, the constituents want some change there. They've spoken. We'll see what happens. Might not hear anything until after signing day. Even then, who knows? But something in January for sure. At the latest, after the second signing day in February. Until then, I don't think we're going to get any leaks because D'Antonio's not one to give leaks. But anyway, appreciate everybody stopping by, checking out Spartan Mag Live this week. We will be back next week. We'll talk about that Rutgers game on Sunday. Might even go over to that Maryland film a little bit more and take a closer look at some of the returning players for next year. See if there's any positives and negatives. Certainly a lot of negatives because it was an ugly victory. We'll talk more about state of the program as always. And it'll be maybe the last one before signing day. So we expect to have some more recruiting stuff next week also. So I appreciate everybody for being here. Go check us out at SpartanMag.com. We'll see you next week. That's it for now in East Lansing. Thanks for joining in. Jim Comparoni, SpartanMag.com. In the meantime, go check us out at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com. Thanks. Take care, everybody.